Welcome back to another video from beautiful Red Rock near Vegas. We climbed up again. You can see how far down that is. We climbed up again to find a nice little quiet spot so that we could film videos for you. Today's video, I would like to talk about how we build our raw vegan soups. Every time I post a soup, someone sends me a DM and says, "Are your soups cold?" So I want to talk about how the temperature is and how we make these soups to make them chunky and delicious. And we'll chat about that in this video. Thank you once again for joining me here for a wonderful, fun YouTube video chatting about soups and how we make them. If you want to enjoy more raw soup recipes, just like how we're going to discuss in this video, I do have my soup book, and there's 77 soups, stews, chilies, and curries in there. All of my ebooks are 40% off. You can use code RAWFOOD40 to get that discount. The link is right here or in the description box below. So raw soups, are they cold, and how do we make them? Number one, raw soups are not cold unless you want them to be cold. They don't have to be cold, and we like to eat them slightly warmer than room temperature. We use our blender to blend on high for about a minute and a half or so, and it nicely warms it up. The magic temperature is 115 degrees Fahrenheit, but again, these are just little details, right? If it gets a little too hot, then whatever. It's not the end of the world. You can have cooked soup, you can have raw soup, as long as it's vegan, really, and you're filling yourself up with lots of plants. That's the main goal, right? If you want it raw, that's cool, but remember, don't choose raw because you have to, choose it because you want to. So raw soups don't have to be cold. Like I said, we'll blend in the Vitamix around a minute and a half to warm it up. And plus, the chunky ingredients we like to warm up in the dehydrator. Another tip that we like to have is to warm the bowls. If you're using ceramic bowls, you can warm them slightly in the dehydrator as well, because a cold ceramic bowl, if you pour a slightly warmed raw soup in there, it will get a little colder faster than if you poured it in a warm bowl. So that's a tip for those who are doing raw through the winter. You can warm your bowls, you can marinate your chunky portion in the dehydrator, and you can blend your sauce on high in the Vitamix, and you have a nice warm cozy soup, still raw and of course vegan. So how do we even make a raw soup? You could definitely cook any of these soups, it's totally your prerogative, but to make a raw one, we start the day before. The day before, we like to chop and freeze certain ingredients, the harder ones like carrots, onions, celery, leeks, maybe even mushrooms if you wanted to do that too, or any other harder root. Maybe you're doing sweet potato or a beet, and you want to chop them into little chunks and freeze them. Freeze them on a plate. That's what I like to do best. And then the next day, about, I would say maybe 2 hours before mealtime, take those out of the freezer and mix them in some kind of a sauce. You could use lemon juice, coconut aminos, maybe you could add a little miso paste in there, just a smidge, and water works too. But marinate that all with some garlic powder, onion powder, chili pepper. If you're making a curry, you could use curries, any spices that go along with that. You can make it taste like any flavor that you are going to be making your soup base taste like. So use those spices, whatever you want, in your sauce, and then put all your frozen veggies into that sauce. Mix it really well. We like to do oyster mushrooms as well to give it a little bit of a different texture. So we'll mix those with the sauce and then put them on a solid dehydrator tray. We'll throw them in the dehydrator for about an hour and a half or so at 115 degrees Fahrenheit. And this is going to allow them to marinate and soften and thaw, obviously, since they came out of the freezer. Then right at soup dinner time, we blend our soup base. And the soup base is basically a savory smoothie. It is really easy to make. We always start just the same way we would do any of our sauces. We do date-based. We'll add fruit to it. Like this one that we have is in the soup book. It's called the Spicy Ginger Chicky Soup. And this one is mango and apricot as the base for the calories and the sweetness. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff in there that give it the spicy. There's ginger and hot peppers and garlic and all kinds of good stuff. So we blend that with more water than we would an actual sauce. So typically if you're blending a sauce, you're using half a cup to maybe 1 cup of water, but with a soup, you're using more than 2 cups of water, sometimes 3 cups, depending on how much soup you want and how thin you want the sauce. Because if you're making a stew, you might use a little less water to have a thicker sauce, or a chili or a curry needs even less water, so it's a little bit thicker. So it really depends on what you're making. But for a soup, we like to use between 2 and 3 cups of water. We blend that on high for, again, 1.5 to 2 minutes to warm it up. Then while it's blending, we're taking the marinated veggies and maybe the soup bowls that we had in the dehydrator out of the dehydrator. We put the marinated veggies in a bowl, and once the soup base is ready, we pour it into the bowl, we mix it with those veggies, and then we pour it into our soup bowls and enjoy. So that's basically how we build our soups. We freeze things the day before, which can take 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how long it takes you to chop them. And then about 2 hours before, we just make a quick sauce, 5 minutes, mix it and put it in the dehydrator. Then right at dinner time, that's when we blend the soup. So really all in all, maybe around 20 minutes of food prep throughout the days, like the day before, the day of. There's a little bit of prep there too. So it's not that much extra prep work. It's just planning. That's really all it is. And for planning, we do like to buy bags of carrots and bags of celery, chop those in advance and freeze them. So we have access to these ingredients that are already frozen, ready to go, and we don't have to do the night before prep. All we do is 2 hours before our soup, we marinate the veggies and then blend the soup base when we're ready to go. So I hope you guys can make some raw soups yourself and enjoy some deliciousness. And if you want to grab my soup book and make some of my recipes, you can do so at 40% off. The code is rawfood40 and the link is right here as well as in the description box below. I'd love to see some of the soups you make, whether they're from my book or not. Tag me on social media so I can see your wonderful creations. I love seeing what everyone makes from my recipe book, as well as stuff that they make on their own. It's wonderful. And like I said, you can cook these soups. So if you are making soup for yourself that's raw, you can always cook some of the ingredients. You can boil the soup base if you want. It's totally up to you for your family, obviously. But they might enjoy the raw soup just as much as you do, so you might not even need to cook anything. But again, remember, and I'm going to say this often going forward on my channel and on my social media, that it's not about the food, it's about our behaviors with the food, and it's our why. Are you choosing raw food because you're scared of cooked food, or because you think you're not going to heal if you don't do raw food? These are all things that we really need to think about, really moving inward and asking ourselves, why are we choosing these things? And we should be choosing them out of desire, out of joy. We should be choosing them because we love ourselves and we want to put awesome foods in our body, not because if we don't, we're not good enough, or we're not going to heal, or we're not going to detox, or any of these other things. If I'm choosing things from a state of fear, then I'm not feeling as free as I would if I chose things out of sheer joy because I just want to. And that's why I choose raw food. I'm not anti-cooked food. I don't want people to feel guilty or not good enough if they can't do fully raw, depending on where they live or what they have access to or their relationship with food. It's just about adding more raw food every single day to your diet, because we all know we should be eating more plants, more raw plants, get that hydration, that variety. It's a beautiful thing, and to choose because you want to, not because you have to. I love you guys so much. Thank you again for joining me. We'll be back tomorrow for another video. Until then, I love you and fruit on.